I'm Liz, reporting for World Bites.
I'm Matt Williamson.
Hi, I'm Mara Shibata.
And we're here today in Hackney to find out about what the public think about nuclear power in the aftermath of events in Japan.
What are your views on nuclear energy?
Well, I got mixed feelings about it. I think that it's a possible solution to assist in the global warming problem, but there are long-term problems with disposal of waste and safety.
On the safety issue, have those views affected you because of what's happened in Japan recently?
To a large extent, yes. It seems to me that rather than dealing with a problem, they kept raising the limits that were supposedly acceptable, which is a bit of sort of doublespeak, really, which you kind of expect from the nuclear industry.
Some people have actually said that the ways in which what happened in Japan was portrayed in the news, in particular in foreign media, was a little bit over-exaggerated. I mean, has that ever crossed your mind when you came across the subject?
Not at all. I think quite the reverse. I think that the dangers were suppressed initially, and as usual, the truth was only extracted piece by piece, on a daily basis, when the operators felt they couldn't conceal the facts any longer.
No one has really died from what's happened in Fukushima so far. So, I mean, that perhaps suggests that, nuclear might still be a safe option. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's very difficult to quantify exactly how many people have died. The effects of nuclear power are long-term and still unquantified. I mean, up to 50 years ago, people were sort of thinking a daily dose of radium was a good idea, and then hundreds of people became ill after that. So I'm not prepared to accept assurances that everything's hunky-dory now and that it's all a load of scaremongering. I think we have to keep a cooler head.
I'm an optimist, I'm an open-minded, and I believe that nuclear power is very helpful and not as dangerous as they want it to appear.
Have you thought more about it since the events of what's been going on in Japan, in Fukushima recently?
Well, yes. I mean, the plant in Fukushima has survived a great natural disaster, the tsunami that is, and previously an earthquake. So that means that the safety standards are quite high.
How do you feel the media has represented this particular issue?
I have seen a shift of focus from the media, from the tsunami, which was a great disaster, 20,000 people have died, to the plant accident. So I don't know why that is. Maybe they're against it, obviously. I think in Britain they don't want any more nuclear plants.
Well, yeah, how would you feel yourself about more nuclear plants being introduced in Britain?
If the safety standards are high, which history has shown that there are fewer accidents from nuclear plants and there are fewer people have died from nuclear accidents than from a car accident, for example. I will give you an example. It's like going by car or going by the aeroplane. Many people still are afraid of aeroplanes, but they are the safest way, whereas there are more people dying on the streets. Thank you very much.
There's always safety aspects, the danger of radiation leaks, which are quite real, as have been seen in Japan. I think people's health and the environment and people's livelihood are being put at risk just so a minority can generate huge profit for themselves.
Well, we're talking about a minority, but a lot, 70% of the rest of the world is still living in the dark. They don't have lights and stuff.
Sure.
And nuclear power could actually solve that problem.
No, I mean, nuclear power is dangerous, full stop.
I think it's just a facet of the media to focus on things which are sort of relevant and interesting. If you think about natural disasters, it's kind of become this kind of pornography as such, in the way that they sort of try and enhance the sort of images of the natural disaster. And I think that sort of building on moral panics about nuclear power is sort of an aspect of that.
Nuclear power. I don't know too much about it, but I hear it's pretty efficient, maybe a little dangerous. It has a stigma of being kind of dangerous, I guess. But yeah, efficient.
Do you think the stigma of danger is unjustified?
Well, I don't know. Again, I don't know too much about it, but I think maybe just even like in movies and everything, nuclear power has such like a dramatic connotation. But I think a lot of that stems from just not knowing a lot about it. Like scientifically, we just have the worst case scenario of what can happen, I guess. But I don't know. I don't think it's super dangerous on its own, I guess.
I think it's useful, but I mean, we have to make sure it's safe, because I know there's been lots of accidents that have happened and people who have died, and I just think it has to be under control and maybe used to the bare minimum. Like, if we have alternatives, maybe we should use them instead.
What sort of alternatives do you think?
I'm not sure, but there's things like solar power and, I don't know, just organic things that don't harm people and don't harm the environment. They've got to be better than pouring chemicals into the atmosphere. And there was a place called like Chernobyl or something, and there was a massive nuclear spill there and so many people died, and it didn't have to happen if they'd gone for like healthy power.
To be honest, I mean, I think a lot of people, in terms of what's happened in Japan, I think a lot of people just assume the worst, but they haven't done their research. I think people need to do their research before they start, coming up with, I don't know, drastic things that might happen. But I think it's a good thing. I've heard good things about it. I don't think it's bad or it affects us in any bad way or anything like that. So
I guess it's the best we've got so far, but it's a bit dangerous because of the ionization of the cells. Because we know from like the beta particles and alpha particles, they're highly ionizing, and that can cause cells to mutate and cause cancer, and which is not something we want to have in our lives. So I guess that's the danger with it. We know that nuclear waste is extremely hard to get rid of. Like, you have to store them in containers, like lead-lined containers, put them in the storage. That is extremely hard. And if it happens like the one that happened in Fukushima, that would be just absolutely dreadful, because I'll just leave the country, simply.
I think it's natural for people to have a real aversion to the idea of nuclear, and mostly that's because of, what do you do with the waste? There aren't really answers yet in that area. However, I think we all need to radically think all our ideas about energy, where it comes from, and the way that we use it as well. I think we need to do some serious thinking about our lifestyles and the impact of our quite heavy carbon imprint on other poorer countries in other parts of the globe. Have any of the recent events in Fukushima altered your opinion on the subject at all? I think that some people were originally worried, weren't they, in Japan. They were saying that the nuclear power stations would not be able to withstand these kind of natural disasters. And of course, many of our own nuclear stations and in other countries are often near the coast or in vulnerable areas of earthquake. However, the fact that the reactors did withstand quite an extreme event, or a very extreme natural event, made some people feel more confident about using nuclear power. I think it's quite interesting that in Germany, as a consequence, people turned against nuclear very much, and that's resulted in a very dramatic shift in public opinion and public policy as well. However, some environmental campaigners, such as Mark Leiners, has been arguing that as a result now, actually the carbon footprint in Germany will be even worse, because actually nuclear is quite a green way of creating energy in some ways. How would you feel about more nuclear plants being introduced in Britain? I have a problem in a way, because one part of my brain thinks, well, why not? What else can we do? I don't think it's the first option, and it's certainly not the most appealing option. I think, first of all, we should be dramatically reducing our energy needs, and I think that's extremely important. Well, yeah, I mean, because I just think it's a shame that we have to lower all of our standards of living, and say people in 70% of the rest of the world have to go without light and things just because we're scared of nuclear power, when that could offer a great solution. I think you're right in one sense that nuclear can offer a solution, but I also think that you can't have your cake and eat it. And I think, there are also other ways. For instance, in Ethiopia, they're using solar panel increasingly and becoming leaders in the field in some way in terms of using solar for electricity. I think there's several different options that we can look at, and we all need to be very imaginative in our thinking.
I don't see that there's actually going to be much of an alternative if we all want the amount of heat and light and power that we all seem to want to live the way that we want to live. And I think that the problem that we've got is that nuclear isn't perfect. When it goes wrong, it goes horribly wrong. But actually it's quite smart, and it's the whole sort of decommissioning and the kind of the future planning of it, and what do you do when those things need replacing, and what do you do with the byproducts from it. I think what concerns me about green power is I just can't see how it's going to generate enough power with wind farms. And it seems that wherever you want to put a wind farm, everybody objects, unless it's out to sea. So it's like, I think we're all quite hypocritical actually, in that none of us wants it in our backyard. We're all scared of it, but we want the power and we want the lifestyles that we've got.
I still think nuclear energy or power or whatever is wicked to bring into action, right? I just think man in themselves, they're always inventing to be ahead of one another. Man is not going to just stop at one thing. He's always going to go further, looking for something else. We're going above ourselves. Man never seems to satisfy with his lot. He's always wanting something more, something else, something greater. I've got this and you haven't got it, and I've got to invent this.
Are there any good things about that, though? I mean, can it not be a positive thing?
What? Nuclear energy. What is positive about it? Why can't we satisfy with what we have now? What happened to what we have now? Is it not enough? We ordinary so-called uneducated people, right? We just listen to the media and what the media tell us, and they tell us what they think we want to hear, because they think we're so stupid that we don't know nothing, right? Or we can't think for ourselves. Whether Japan, whether England, whether America, whatever, whoever have the power, they're going to do as they like anyway. Whether we ordinary people speak out, whether we ordinary people don't like or want what they are doing, they're going to do as they like.
Would you say events in Japan recently have worried you at all with regard to nuclear power?
Of course, I'm worried a bit, but I absolutely disagree with this media scaring of society because everybody are focusing in media. Everybody would like to focus on some unseen, some fears about nuclear power, but really we should not forget that there was tsunami and many people are dead, and there is no any casualties from nuclear power. So we should remember we shouldn't play with the people's emotions.
And why do you think the media places this emphasis on the fear?
The first, I think that natural disasters, unfortunately they are imminent and they are unpredictable, and for example nuclear power and man-made some facilities, always easy to blame somebody because they did and they are wrong, because they did something not compatible with the environment, not compatible with some technical issues. So that's why I'm very disagree about this, because here we have good samples about the practice in nuclear power station that it was tsunami, it was a huge natural disaster, but this power plant is still working. Here's the answer, I think.
I think it's a necessary evil.
Why evil?
Well, because I don't think we've sorted out what we do with the spent fuel. And that's just getting buried somewhere, and nobody knows what's going to happen to it in centuries to come.
Okay, have any of the events of Fukushima in Japan recently changed your opinion?
Yes, it's made me think worse of it. I don't like it even more now.
Why is that?
Only because it seems unstable, and if the planet's unstable, we're not going to be a very safe situation if we're surrounded by nuclear plants.
I think it seems to me to be a good source of renewable energy. People seem to be a bit scared about the implications of the waste that comes from it, but I think overall it's good rather than bad.
Have any of your opinions been affected by the recent news stories about the power plant problems in Fukushima?
No, because to be honest, it seems to me like there's been worse problems going over there than that, to be honest, and I think that was a result of something else and not the power plant itself.
So would you be pro the idea of having more nuclear power plants in Britain?
Yeah, but I think also you've got to find new ways of getting energy as well. I mean, obviously wind is something that they're looking into more and more, but yeah, I think, yeah, overall, yes.
I think it's bad because, like, sort of the same thing with, like, X-rays. The more you get X-rays, the more harmful it is to yourself. But on the other hand, people say it's unlikely for you to get X-rays like every week unless there's something really wrong with you, and it's not that harmful to you. It depends on how strong the radioactive wave really is, because we've been learning about it in school, like physics, and we're taking exams on it. The way they're talking about it in Japan, saying how much it's going to affect people, how people have to be evacuated and stuff, it makes you sort of think about it in more depth. I'm not affected by it, but my aunt is, because she has a friend whose family lives in Japan and who went out there to visit her family just before it happened, and like the way she's talking about it is sort of the same way the news are portraying it. So obviously the media do sort of like over exaggerate things for ratings and stuff, but they are giving you information. But I think they could give more factual information for like you to know things instead of just for ratings, if you get what I mean. Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm from Tokyo as well. I've got family out there, and yeah, they were sort of panicked, you know, in the first instant by what happened and stuff. But, you know, they're now getting on with their day-to-day life, like, quite, you know, normally. Yeah. And, you know, there was all this scare about, you know, sort of radiation being in food and stuff like that. But on the whole, they've come to the conclusion that actually nuclear is safe, and at the end of the day, it does supply, like, a major part of their electricity sources. So, I mean, if you were told that nuclear is safe, like, what would you think about that?
I don't know, because like you said, it powers a lot of people's electricity. If it was good, then people would want to use more of it, but wouldn't that like sort of cause more danger if it's used in the wrong way? But if it's used in the right way, then people could feel safe about it. It'll be fine.
Well, after the events that have just happened in Japan, it's kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Nuclear power, I think, is good for energy purpose, but sometimes in some country, I think it should be avoided because, like country like Japan, where the earthquake most frequently happens, I think the building power plant is not really a good idea.
With regards to like Japan and all the recent stuff that's happened, obviously we need energy, and it's got to come from somewhere. We've got 7 billion people living on the planet, and unless we go back to candles, there's not really much you can do about it.
I actually I'm very pro nuclear power. I believe it's one of the lesser evils of the fuels we have out there, as opposed to coal, oil, electricity, solar panels, and any other renewable resources are far too impractical and expensive in order to produce electricity and energy for us on a mass scale.
Are you at all worried by events in Japan recently, for example?
I'm worried about the tsunami and the earthquake. And for a time, and I have to admit, I was a bit worried about the Fukushima plant. I believe the media were very sensationalist and fear-mongering to the public, who are very fluid, and we lap it up, and something comes out in the media, we tend to believe it, we take it at face value, we don't like to look at and evaluate the situation. So yes, at the start I was very scared of it, but when you look at it deeper, no, not at all.
So do you think the UK should have more nuclear power plants?
Permitting that the costs are justifiable. I'm not an expert on the cost of building a nuclear power plant, and I'm very confident that the government and the contractors who build these nuclear power plants do it to a safe and high standard, whereby we can ensure that nothing like Fukushima will happen. And I'm pretty sure it would not happen here in Britain.
And what about other countries? What about, for example, there's a great deal of scandals surrounding countries like Iran trying to get nuclear power. What do you think about that?
Who are the West to tell Iran that they can't have nuclear power? That's one question. Why can we have it but not them? We see them as corrupt. We see them as backwards politically. We laugh at their elections. I mean, who are we to tell them? Maybe we could focus on coming together, a collection of minds, helping each other out, share ideas, and in building a nuclear power plant.